From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios. That is Sean Fazan, fresh back from the owners' meetings in Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome back, Sean.
Thank you. Good to be back. Before we get into all of the information that I was able to receive in Phoenix, be sure to like, share, rate, review, subscribe, wherever you get your podcast. YouTube channel, the Fox 8 New Orleans YouTube channel. Soon we will have our own our Overtime Podcast YouTube channel. The feedback we've been getting from that has been fantastic.
Recently approved.
Yes, that's good stuff. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, it's a nice little divider line, the end of March here. Free agency is kind of really slowed down. Yeah. Now teams have really shifted in to draft mode, and we were able to talk to Mickey Loomis, talk to Dennis Allen in Phoenix about moves that were made, and I just want to kind of go through a few things that I felt that I picked up on throughout the conversations that we were having. And the biggest, frankly, is confirmation, affirmation, however you want to call it, to the Saints situation based off what we've been talking about over the last 2 months or so in regards to just how the Saints feel and how they've navigated the process and our views on what has taken place. A lot of what they told me kind of confirmed what we've already been talking about over these last couple of months. The big picture is this. They feel good. They feel confident. They feel optimistic. And, when you ask them about it on camera, they got a modest tone. They like it. Some moves to make. Still got some other work to do. But I'm here to tell you, behind the scenes, they feel really, really good about the moves they've made, what they've been able to accomplish, because they really went all in getting a couple guys, and they were able to land it. We'll talk about that in a second. And when you stack up who they gained, stack up who they lost, stack up who they were able to keep and restructure, all the things they had to do, they come away right now as we wind down in March and get into April feeling really good about their position as an NFC South team, and then as obviously an NFC team that they can certainly compete with the hierarchy or within the hierarchy of the best teams within the conference and, of course, the division. And it really all began with Derek Carr. It began with Derek Carr because if you take all the moves that this team made, everyone but subtract Derek Carr, you would not get the same positive vibes that you're getting right now. I'm here to tell you, it was a cool, relaxed, just confident vibe from the team. And honestly, we haven't felt that the last couple of off seasons. We haven't. There's been anxiety. There's been curiosity. There's been, well, who's gonna do this? There was a quarterback competition a couple of years ago. Last year at this time, they had just come off the pursuit of Deshaun Watson. Kind of had to resettle on Jameis Winston. Now you have what they feel like is security at the quarterback position in Derek Carr. And they feel like that stability has really permeated throughout the locker room and the front office to where they feel good. They're on stable ground going forward. So, in Derek Carr's case, it was what we had initially thought about why we liked the move and why after he spoke and we kind of got a chance to be around him a little bit, I felt like his presence was going to be important. There's just a presence about him. He is a natural leader without having to say a whole lot, but he says exactly what needs to be said. He's not quiet. He does talk, but there is a presence about him where everyone seems to just understand he's the guy. That presence matters, both in the locker room, but probably more than anything else. This was not discussed a lot last year with the offensive coordinator, Pete Carmichael. Pete Carmichael last year, this is why he has a job still. Pete Carmichael last year was in a situation where he was calling plays, didn't have a strong presence at quarterback, and had a couple of quarterbacks that didn't necessarily see the game the same way he saw it, because he saw it the same way Sean and Drew saw it. Mm-hmm. And they now believe Derek Carr and Pete Carmichael see the game the same way. That synergy is immensely important when you talk about play calling. You talk about there's so much that goes into a game plan week in and week out and what you're going to do, what you can do, what you can't do, what you ask certain players to do. You've got to see it the same way. And that's why Dennis Allen dropped a Drew Brees, not comparison, but run and operated a lot like Drew did, which obviously they've had a lot of success. I think that's why Pete Carmichael still has a job, because for all this time he did it one way, and it was hugely successful, and he got a ton of credit because for his part, which was kind of the behind the scenes, in the lab, creating these plays, he wasn't the big alpha, the big personality in the room. And last year he kind of had to be that, and it's not him. Now you have the bigger personality in Derek Carr. And I think there's just a belief, and there's no guesswork. You know, last year after 3 games, you had switched over to Andy Dalton, and then there was kind of a confused element of whose team is this really? It wasn't Andy's. It wasn't Jameis's. But there will be no question. And that kind of peace of mind that's the formula they've used to win, and they're back to that formula with Derek Carr. Now, on the flip side, the surprise, like you and I were surprised, I think everyone was surprised, Jameis Winston's return.
Yep, definitely.
Dennis Allen confirmed, he said, I didn't think he'd have any interest in coming back after I pursued Derek Carr, but lo and behold, he did, got the deal done, and we're glad he's back. Whatever you do or don't like about Jameis Winston has a lot of starts under his belt as a backup quarterback, and when you have that kind of experience, they like that. So I think, A, there was confirmation on the they were all a little surprised that he agreed to it, and B, having him back certainly helps them in terms of just having a quality backup in place.
Yeah, it's like you said a few episodes ago, it doesn't hurt to ask when offering a deal to Jameis, and so they were pleasantly surprised when he said yes.
And you look, Jameis wasn't the only one that took a pay cut. Andrews Pete did.
Yeah.
Lutz did. Michael Thomas did. That's a lot of players agreeing to take pay cuts. A lot of guys that have played a lot of football and have had a lot of success. That's another, even if you're not expecting it, that's another like feeling of, okay, we've got a decent organization here. We've got a good culture here if these guys are willing to do this. Because, I mean, I don't know what could have happened on the open market with Jameis Winston. I don't think there was a huge market for him. I think this was a business decision. I don't think he could have got anything better than what the Saints are offering. That's the main reason why he's back. But still, it's humbling to have to take that pay cut from the team that was paying you, going in another direction at your position, at the game's most highest profile position. And now you're going to return at a lower rate, knowing they basically see you as, it's a demotion. Let's just call it what it is. It's a demotion. In Michael Thomas's case, he was at one point the highest paid receiver in the NFL. Andrews Pete started a lot of games. He's kind of hit or miss when you talk about his reputation in terms of is he good, is he bad? Probably averages out to about average. And then Will Lutz had a bad year. Certainly, it felt like he was more than willing to take that pay cut because it almost felt like he felt bad about last year and was perfectly fine with taking the pay cut because he knows he can earn that back because they were going to cut him. They were going to cut him if he didn't take the pay cut.
Right.
So, yeah, all those things lead to what I have felt is a very confident tone from the organization. A lot different than, say, November of last season, where we're talking about is DA one and done? Is the former head coach coming back? Is who's going to be the quarterback? This and that and all that other stuff. So that's certainly good. Now, it's March, heading into April. Who cares if you win in March? You got to win when it counts.
No football's been played yet.
So I think there's a realistic tone there, and there are some things that have to happen. The bottom hasn't fallen out. Why do I bring that up? Well, because I made a point to bring up the Saints salary cap to Mickey on the record, to Dennis Allen on the record. And then, you're at a convention, if you will, like this, the owners' meetings like this. You talk to people certainly around. And it's like we've always said, why haven't the Saints pulled the plug? They haven't been forced to. The worst they've been is 7-10 over the last, since 06, how many years? 16, 17 years. Mm-hmm. The worst they have been is 7-10. And they felt like there was an opportunity right now to restructure some deals and take on the risk of holding on to a few aging players because they felt like the reward is winning the division back in the postseason. To the people that don't like that and would have rather them just burned it down and restarted, there are a couple things working against you. You're the Saints. They don't have a high draft pick to do that because every team that does that, they have a high draft pick to kind of kickstart the process. The Saints don't have that. Mm-hmm. They had never had a top 10 pick since 2006. Think about that. They've never had a top 10 pick in the first round. I mean, this year would have been the number 10 overall, but obviously they had traded it. So you can talk about tearing it down, but they've always been relevant well into the season, well into the end of the season. Even last year, they were relevant. They could have made the playoffs up until like week 16, and then they've never had a top 10 pick, so they've never felt like they've been bad enough to where they weren't just one off season away from getting things back on track. This was all what we've talked about, and honestly, through my discussions over the week, over the last 3 or 4 days, that's where they're at. That's why they haven't done it. And the ones that hate the salary cap approach, they just kind of chuckle at. In fact, if you saw my story Monday night, there is literally Mickey Loomis chuckling when I asked him the question about the criticism he gets or the attention his team gets with their approach.
It shows you they pay attention to all of that, and they see that, and they're like, yeah, no, these people don't really know what they're talking about when they slander us for that kind of deal.
But people don't read the risk correctly. The risk is not being able to sign or hold on to dead money and your accounting is bad. No, that's not the risk is holding on to a player too old because it's easier to restructure that guy to get more present day cap space as opposed to releasing that player and only getting a little bit based off of the dead money. That is the risk. Mm-hmm. And look, if you get a few aging players, which can happen, it absolutely can happen. It can happen this year. I don't want it all to be roses and sunshine. I mean, it could happen, then you got to have it doesn't take a lot for that all of a sudden to become an old roster, and then you're in a little bit of a bind. But they feel like as an organization, they're closer to the other side of getting back on track and then, I don't know if you call it rebuilding, but retooling and reloading while having getting back to regular season and hopefully postseason success. Another point that was kind of brought up to me that we've been discussing. This is Dennis Allen's team. And
I remember saying that.
The conversations that I've had, they feel like now they have properly given Dennis Allen what he needs to succeed. They feel like now, in year 2 with the DA regime, they feel like now they have a team and they're giving the head coach, the team, the resources, whatever you want to call it, to properly succeed, and that's what the expectation is. So it's a good thing in that they feel like he's got what he needs, but now he's got to go out and do it. Mm-hmm. If you listen to Dennis Allen on Tuesday morning, he definitely had a little bit of a confident tone. He definitely had you can just feel it. There's an aura. There's a feeling of confidence, quiet confidence, optimism surrounding his team and what is now kind of his full footprint on this organization. Last year, like we said, what did we say? Felt like he was coaching what? Someone else's team.
Yep.
This year,
it was still hanging over.
Still kind of hovering over. This year, I think that's gone. I think that's certainly gone. So that was all good. And it look, we do what we do, and So it was interesting to hear kind of our thoughts out loud when we were talking about it. Somewhat, really confirmed through conversations over the weekend. But there was more, and there wasn't. Like I said before, we can't all do just roses and sunshine. Is that right? I think that works.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
There was some issues.
Rainbows and sunshine? Sunshine and rainbows? There's sunshine and rainbows there.
Whatever it is. There was some doses of reality, Michael Thomas being one of them. He's still not 100%. Okay. How do we view this?
I mean,
it was a surgery in November. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Toe injury. He didn't actually have the injury actually had the injury back in week 3. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Against Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a long time to be recovering.
Yeah. And I remember you saying in that episode where we talked about Michael Thomas, where we thought for sure he wasn't gonna be on the roster in 2023, that his body is just breaking down. He's never gonna be 100% healthy anymore. So
yeah, exactly. He's gonna have to prove he can now maintain durability throughout a 17-game season, and even if it's not 17 games, he's got to be available for the majority of the season. So him not being 100%, I don't think it's surprising to them. I don't know if it's disappointing. They know how OTAs, everything certainly is, and he's got to be ready for training camp and preseason and that sort of thing. And he was kind of in the same boat last year, but I do think there is a little bit of okay. Let's wait and see now. Once again, is he going to be healthy? Is he not? It's going to be a question until he gets answered. So I do think that was something to it's always something to monitor, but I do think that was confirmed as well that he's not 100%. They're looking at training camp. I don't think he's going to touch the field in OTAs. So while there is excitement about Derek Carr and Michael Thomas, Thomas has got to be healthy enough to get on the field for that duo to even scratch the surface on how good they can become, and in turn how good the Saints offense can become if those two are on the field together. Another injury question / recovery note was Trevor Penning. They love him. They love him. We talked to Doug Marrone yesterday at LSU's Pro Day. I'll get into LSU's Pro Day in a minute. They love him. They really, and they felt like at some point, they said last Tuesday that during the Green Bay practices when they really felt like he had really turned the corner. He got hurt in preseason, then he went away, he came back, and then by the end of the year, he was able to get that start, and he got hurt again. They want him to be the starter. Okay, they want him to be the starter this year.
Yeah, I mean they want him. I think they wanted him to be the starter last year, but he got hurt in the preseason. I mean, you don't spend that first round pick on a guy that you don't think is gonna usurp the role fairly quickly.
But here's the thing: he's not gonna be ready till training camp, dealing with the foot injury or whatever the exact injury is. I know it has to do with the foot. They kept James Hurst for a reason because they could have cut him and gotten some cap space.
Yeah, no, he's good, great utility guy.
Great utility guy. So, I think they want Trevor Penning to be the starter, and they hope and expect him to be. He's got to get healthy, and he's got to get back to the form they felt like he was rounding into before he got hurt for the second time. So that's another one. Trevor Penning, and then Cesar Ruiz is another one. He got hurt late in the season as well. Hope is that training camp for him. And I've got to check the fifth-year option thing with him. Maybe we can look it up at some point. But I don't know exactly. Did they pick it up? Did they have to pick it up? But I know he's coming up on that fairly soon as he enters his fourth year with the Saints. Dennis Allen also added, you're still looking for some linebacker and defensive line depth. I mean, again, all you got to do is look at the roster. You can certainly tell whether that be D tackle, defensive end, or and then obviously a linebacker as well. So we'll sum up the Saints portion with this. They feel good, and our intuition it was fairly on point. I mean, it was on point, and that's certainly not to praise us. It's just to kind of sometimes you have these things and you don't necessarily get an opportunity to see if you're on the right track. Yeah. Well, it turns out that was indeed the case. So
we were able to accurately read the room.
Right. So I mean, this is not us patting ourselves on the back here. I really mean, if we were wrong, we were wrong. But it is certainly, and I don't know if there is a right or a wrong, but it just kind of is what it is. So. I do think that's where they stand, and I think as they look forward to the draft, they'll do the best player available thing. Best player available within reason, because there's never going to be just one guy unless there's a crazy drop from some guy they have highly graded in the draft. It's generally 3 or 4 guys, and when you get in that situation, tie goes to the position of need. So,
do they still trade up?
All right, that's why not? Let's go there.
Sorry if I'm totally circumventing what you got.
Let's go there. No, that's fine. I think an aggressive team like the Saints and a long wait on draft night all the way to 29 given some higher end selections in later rounds that they have, yeah, I think there's a chance. I think there's a legitimate chance they move up, a modest move up, not from 29 to 12, probably more from like 29 to like 22 or 23. And either they sacrifice that third round pick or they sacrifice that fourth round pick to go up a couple spots and maybe grab a player that they like, that they feel like they go up and get them. It would offset anybody they would get with that third or fourth round selection. So I do think it's always a realistic possibility, but yes. And that there is a little bit of a buzz with that as well, just because, we're not dumb. We followed this team for a long time. Not when I say we, I mean like people that cover this team, fan base, kind of dialed in fan base, and just the Saints being the Saints. Most people understand that the chances of them moving up are high. It always has been, and it always will be. In particular, in that first round, they've done it for quite some time. So, speaking of that draft, I was at LSU's Pro Day yesterday, Wednesday. Is that right? Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Had a chance to catch up with linebacker coach Michael Hodges, Saints offensive line coach Doug Marrone, who were doing some drills out there, getting hands-on with those guys. Interesting day. Didn't see quite the contingent that you normally see out there in terms of head coaches, GMs. Bill Belichick was there. I think he was the only head coach.
Wow.
I think he and Brian Kelly must be friends because they spoke a lot. They talked a lot while they were there.
I can see that.
Yeah. But it was weird because, we all went there. I know I did. I foolishly signed up for it because I had the late – I didn't get in till almost – not till midnight, Tuesday night from Arizona. And then I had signed up before to do the LSU Pro Day, and I had to be back at the station very early to get up to Baton Rouge to do the Pro Day. And I went up there because I wanted to see the Keyshawn Boutte improvement from the Combine to the Pro Day, which is there's always an improvement.
Yeah.
It needs to be because it's kind of home field advantage, but there was not one. First off, he didn't run the 40. All right. He didn't run the 40. He ran the 4.5 or whatever the Combine. It was disappointing. He had a bad –
tweak your mic a little bit.
He had a bad let me do that. He had a bad Combine performance. So I thought he would try to resurrect that, if you will, at the Pro Day and just say, hey, that was a bad day at the office at the Combine. And it's not really a good situation. It's kind of it's a strange vibe at the Combine. It's a lot of medical stuff, and it can be eerily quiet out there. So I can understand why people don't do their best at the Combine. But as Pro Day, the practice facility, all his teammates, he should have shined. He did not. He didn't run the 40. He did, some drills. And at least 4 or 5 people walked up to me after or during. They said, does he look tired to you? I was like, it's all I'm noticing. After every route he ran, there was it wasn't like a cool walk back, like cool slow walk. It was like I'm gassed, dragging, walking back. He would walk back to Jaden Daniels, hand on the hips, and it would take a significant amount of time when you usually see the reps going, pretty quickly to run the route again, and the same slow walk back. It just, I don't know. I don't know if I was the only one to notice this. Matter of fact, I know I was not the only one to notice this. I don't know what the scouts saw. I don't know how the coaches looked at it, but I know at least from someone untrained in the art of in shape, out of shape in terms of football shape and running routes. I know there was only two receivers running, so maybe it was a little faster than normal, but it certainly looked like to me he was struggling a little bit out there. Now, he caught everything, but it just felt like from a physical conditioning standpoint, he wasn't quite where he needed to be. So that's concerning because he was at one point talked about a first-round pick. I'm not sure he gets into day 2 now.
Yeah, I mean, I know that in the office there's been discussions like, is he just a day 3 pick now?
Might be. It might be. And he's going to have to shine in workouts. He's going to have to shine in private visits because, man, right now it just doesn't look good. And the one guy who did shine was someone who was not invited to the Combine was Jarek Bernard-Converse, the cornerback. He wasn't invited to the Combine, but boy, did he train for this, and he looked fantastic. Ran a 4.4, 42-inch vertical leap. the transfer. He transferred into LSU for his last year. So I think he helped himself. And then B.J. Ojulari, who significantly bigger, muscular, and he wanted to be able to carry the weight at 250. Because sometimes if you gain weight, some people don't hold it well, and they're not as explosive. They're more stiff. He says he felt like he was able to do what he needed to do. I don't think he ran the 40, but I thought physically he looked better. But he's only 6'2", so I don't know Saints-wise if they see him as an edge guy for them, because they like those long 6'6", 6'5" guys. I don't know if they see him in another role, perhaps, but I thought B.J. Ojulari certainly the eye test looked pretty impressive for B.J. Ojulari, and we'll see. I don't know if LSU gets a first-round pick this year. I really don't. That's got to be that hasn't happened in a while. So that's all I got, man. I know it's been a kind of a crazy week, so I wanted to kind of gather a lot of different things and bring them together on one podcast. But before we get out of here, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about your guy. Sil is from Baltimore. You may or may not have known that.
I constantly tweet about it.
The Baltimore Ravens are in a little bit of a situation with quarterback Lamar Jackson. He wants to be traded. He's been tweeting away about his injury status. I don't know. The one thing we haven't heard, Sil, he has never come out and verbally said or confirmed, I want a fully guaranteed contract at X amount. Has he said that?
No.
Okay,
no.
Take it away.
So, what do we call this lanyard, right?
Yeah.
So a little extra, but so the entire situation began this week when John Harbaugh at the owners' meetings was starting his availability, and as soon as it started, Lamar Jackson fires out a series of tweets saying that on March 2nd he requested a trade. This being 20 some odd days later, and first of all, I don't know how a secret is kept that long in the NFL, especially when a player that high profile requests a trade, but it was so strategically planned, and I don't know if he wants to be in Baltimore anymore. I grew up a fan. I grew up in Baltimore. That's like, but I'm looking at it through an objective lens here. Like, it's both sides I feel are a little in the wrong here. Lamar obviously needs an agent to help him navigate the difficult depths of NFL free agency and negotiating with the team. The Ravens had their opportunities. 2 years ago, they probably should have signed him, and now they're on the precipice of losing the greatest quarterback in franchise history. So where does that leave this situation right now? Nobody has wanted to do the Ravens' work for them, like we discussed in the office before, in terms of putting that non-exclusive tag on.
Yeah.
And now with that trade request in, it's not like he demanded a trade. Requesting a trade, I feel like, is different than demanding one, right? But it's just an odd situation altogether for a guy who has confirmed that he's looking for a guaranteed contract, and a guy who has been tweeting out that if he was just in it for the money, why didn't he sit out from week 1 to week 12 when he played all of those games prior to injuring his PCL? And I remember there was all that hubbub about him sitting out against the Steelers, and he said that his PCL became inflamed and he had to stay home because of injuries can act up on a flight. Right. So the situation is just weird. I'm not going to blame one side more than the other, but I think both sides deserve a little bit of blame here, and I'm curious to what you think about this whole situation right now with a former MVP quarterback at 26 years old being as high profile against his current team as he is right now.
Well, the non-exclusive franchise tag muddies the waters, in my opinion, because all the Ravens have to do is say, yeah, we're going to match. And another team can do all that work, and all of a sudden it's all for naught because the Ravens can just step in and match the offer. So that muddies the waters a little bit. There are legitimate concerns about Lamar Jackson's durability. It's starting to creep up the last couple seasons. I would be leery about giving let's just call it, if he wants $50 million a year, that seems to be the high-end rate for top-end quarterbacks. 5 years, $250 million guaranteed. I would have reservations about that because that style of quarterback, it has proven at some point they have to transition out of the athletic style, if you will,
sure,
and have to find some kind of happy medium, a la Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, that type of mobility, as opposed to his style of mobility. And he's already got, he's already kind of built up, I guess you could say, an injury history over the last 2 seasons. Now, I think you can probably do something in the neighborhood of 5 years, 250 with 200 guaranteed, because you're probably guaranteeing the portions of the time he would be with you, where he would be fully healthy within the next 2 to 3 years. You could probably stack it that way, or maybe 200 is too much, maybe like 175 to 200 in that range. But I would not hand out a Deshaun Watson contract to Lamar Jackson. It just wouldn't happen. I wouldn't have handed out a Deshaun Watson contract to Deshaun Watson. I don't think he's good. I don't think he's worth that kind of money.
No.
Okay? But there was leverage. He was in a situation, and he caught fire, and he got the one team to drop the figures that he wanted. I do think Lamar's insistence on doing it a different way in terms of navigating the situation with an advisor / friend, whatever it is, that's clearly not a NFLPA certified agent, has made it even weirder, because I think this whole situation is probably a lot smoother with a boring old agent that knows how to negotiate contracts, and everybody becomes happy. There's a reason why they're there.
Yeah.
They have a role. There's a reason why they're there, and they're worth their commission. And this deal probably would have gotten done, like you said, a couple of years ago. But right now, I don't know how this ends. And is there a chance he sits out this season? That's happened before. It happened to a quarterback that played in this market back in 1990. Bobby Hebert, when he basically sat out the season over a contract situation. It could happen. So Deshaun did it a couple of years ago. So it could certainly happen.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell did it a couple of years ago on the franchise tag. So
well, wouldn't that be something if after all this he just doesn't play this year? Whew. So, man, I'm glad the Saints aren't in that boat. Let's just put it that way.
All right. Well, I appreciate you giving me my little soapbox there for a second, Sean. But remember, again, rate, review, subscribe, share, the whole 9. We really appreciate anything you guys can give us. For Sean Fazan, I'm Vasilios. This has been the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. We'll see you guys next time.